Boris Johnson's absurd plan to give his father a knighthood in his resignation honors will discredit the system and corrode public trust, senior conservatives have told The Independent. Top Tories joined Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer in condemning the move by the former Prime Minister, one of up to 100 names he has reportedly nominated for honours. Former Cabinet Minister David Davis told The Independent, "I think it's ridiculous. It's discrediting the honor system, which is rather a good one in that it doesn't cost money and it recognizes achievements of ordinary people." There has been progressive corrosion of public trust in this system, so it doesn't help to undermine that trust further just because of family favor. "It's corrosive," said Mr. Davis. A former Tory minister added, "The idea of Sir Stanley would be ridiculous nepotism, completely without merit." "The trouble with Boris is he tarnishes everything he touches. And now he is discrediting the entire honor system." The senior figure said, "The Honours Committee should weed out the majority of these names and spare Rishi Sunak the embarrassment of having to veto them and correct Boris's bad judgment." Another ex-Tory minister told The Independent Mr. Johnson putting his dad forward for a knighthood was another bizarre moment from the former party leader. An initial report in the Times that the former PM has nominated his father for a knighthood as part of his resignation honours was not denied by his spokesperson. "We don't comment on honours," they said. It sparked outrage across the political spectrum and calls for Rishi Sunak to veto the proposed knighthood. "The idea that Boris Johnson is nominating his dad for a knighthood, you only need to say it to realize just how ridiculous it is," said Sir Keir. "It's classic of a man like Johnson. I think the public will just think this is absolutely outrageous," said the Labour leader, adding, "The idea of an ex-Prime Minister bestowing honours on his dad, for services to what? Lib Dem Chief Whip Wendy Chamberlain said, "Nepotism, from the former PM wasn't new. If future honours lists are to have any shred of credibility, Sunak must step in and veto this list." SNP MP Tommy Shepherd accused Mr. Johnson of arrogance, and also said he was making a mockery of the honour system, just like he made a mockery of British politics. In 2021, senior Tory MP Caroline Noakes and a journalist publicly accused Stanley Johnson, a former MEP who campaigns on the environment, of touching them at Tory party conferences. Ms. Noakes accused Mr. Johnson SNR of forcefully smacking her on the backside and making a vulgar comment at the conference in 2003. He said he had no recollection of either incident. The 82-year-old, who campaigned for the UK to remain in the EU at the Brexit vote, became a French citizen after applying in 2021. The row has raised fresh questions for the former Tory leader, who had already faced accusations of cronyism after nominating his brother Joe Johnson for a peerage in 2020. His resignation's honours list is proving highly controversial. He is thought to have chosen more than a dozen of his closest allies for peerages, including Nadine Dorries and Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack. Previous reports have indicated he is also putting forward former assistant Charlotte Owens, in her late 20s, and 30-year-old aide Ross Kempsell, who previously worked for Talk TV. Despite previous speculation that the ex-PM's wife Kerry and sister Rachel could also be in line for honours, The Independent understands they are not on the list put forward by Mr. Johnson. Rachel Johnson defended the idea of her father getting a knighthood, telling the Newsagent's podcast that, "If my brother hadn't been Prime Minister, I think my father could have been in line for some sort of recognition in his own right." She added, "He's done much more for the Tory party and the environment than dozens of people who have been given gongs to at this point." And I might also say that it's not unprecedented that a Prime Minister puts a family member, whatever you may feel about it, on his resignation honours list. The Johnson list is currently being vetted by Cabinet Office officials before the Honours Committee decides on which names go forward to Buckingham Palace. Officials at number 10 are said to have concerns about the size of the list, as well as some of the names of those put forward. Mr. Sunak's official spokesperson said on Monday that reports about a knighthood for Mr. Johnson's father were speculative, adding, "The detail of resignation honours is still being worked through." The latest row comes as Mr. Johnson was accused of acting like Donald Trump in his efforts to undermine the Partygate inquiry, while Sir Keir comes under pressure to reveal when he approached top civil servant Sue Gray to be his chief of staff. Mr. Johnson claimed it was surreal that the committee of MPs investigating whether he lied to Parliament relied on evidence from Ms. Gray, who reported on COVID rule breaches last year. But the committee said it had gathered evidence independently of Ms. Gray. Sir Keir refused to say when he first approached Ms. Gray amid a Tory outcry, but he insisted he had absolutely no contact with the civil servant as she carried out her Partygate probe early last year. "I've been looking for a chief of staff for a little while now, but Sue will lay that out, but there's nothing improper at all," the Labour leader said during a phone-in on LBC Radio. Labour's Shadow Work and Pension Secretary Jonathan Ashworth told Times Radio that he understood discussions between Ms. Gray and Sir Keir have been ongoing for several weeks. Ms. Gray had been expected to submit a formal request on Monday to take on the role when she puts in her application to Parliament's anti-corruption watchdog, the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments, ACOBA. But the Sunak government suggested she had failed to follow the rules for notifying ACOBA officials about her decision to take up a post with Labour. Cabinet Office Minister Jeremy Quinn told the Commons, The rules state that approval must be obtained prior to a job offer being announced. The Cabinet Office has not as yet been informed that the relevant notification to ACOBA has been made. Mr. Quinn called on Labour to produce a list of meetings with Ms. Gray. Why are they refusing to publish when they met with Sue Gray? Exactly what is Labour trying to hide? They believe ACOBA rules should be tightened. But why weren't the current ones followed?